Alright guys, what's the story? Welcome along to another episode of Martin's World. Guys, I just wanted to talk to you there this evening, or yeah, this evening I suppose, it's almost 6 o'clock, about the vote that's coming up in New Zealand on the 19th of September. So in the 19th of September, New Zealanders, they get the vote on cannabis legalisation. And the government have made a number of proposals as to what it is New Zealanders are asked to vote upon. And I suppose it's worth mentioning that this is a non-binding vote. So although we could have 60-70% of New Zealanders come out and support this, there is no legal process there, litigation for the government to actually adhere to what the people vote on. But it'd be very hard for them to kind of not follow up, and I'm sure the New Zealanders wouldn't let them get away with that if the majority of people vote in favour of what the government are proposing. So what the government are actually proposing, guys, is this. People under 20 who get caught with cannabis will no longer be criminalised for being in possession of cannabis. Instead, they would have a health-based response, and the New Zealanders define that as either a fine or education. That seems a lot more reasonable to me than bringing a person before a judge or locking them up in prison. So that's one thing that is in the proposals. Selling to a person under 20 will result in a jail sentence, a criminal sentence, and all of that. Don't disagree with that either. You know, if you're selling to people who they deem to be under the age, which in New Zealand seems to be 20, I agree with a person being punished for not adhering to those rules when they're set. They're obviously set for a good reason, you know. The use is restricted then to private residences or licensed premises. So smoking on the street wouldn't be allowed, you know. So you wouldn't have people just sparking up in public parks and whatnot. You know, there'll be a bit of respect there to people around them, I suppose. Something to be built upon into the future. But in the beginning, people will only be able to consume in their home or on their own private property or within a licensed premises. Again, don't really disagree with that either. You know, much better than the way it currently is, which is, you know, it's a wild west out there currently. The limit to buying cannabis will be set at 14 grams a day. That's okay. Again, look, 14 grams of cannabis a day to be able to buy that. That's a nice bit of cannabis. Don't argue there. I would argue that there should be probably no limit set to the amount you can buy. But look, it is what it is. It's a start. You know, the only reason I would argue that there be no limit is because I can walk into an off license and buy a crate of vodka if I wanted to. So why would we treat cannabis any differently? But look, again, much better than what's currently there, which is, you know, a wild west. A drug dealer can sell you whatever he wants, completely unregulated. Regulation is better than not being regulated when it comes to cannabis anyway. THC limit. They're talking about setting a THC limit. So they're talking about 15%. Again, you know, that's a good positive thing. It's a step forward in the right direction. You know, I would make arguments against it, but again, it's regulation. It's better than not having something there. It means that at least when a person goes in to make a purchase, the percentage of the THC is going to be defined in the product. That's a great thing. You know, even if it is set at only 15% initially, you know, it's something that could be worked upon and built up in the future. Advertising is not allowed. Again, that's something that I've talked about numerous times in the past about some of the flaws of our drug policies current in terms of how we deal with alcohol and tobacco, you know. And we've changed our approaches how tobacco is allowed to be advertised, and even the packaging now of the tobacco boxes, you know, it's all changed. They don't want it to be kind of branded and advertising and all that. Plain Jane is kind of the approach there with the tobacco. You know, with alcohol, there has been the arguments in the past of removing the advertising there from, say, the GA guys and all of that kind of stuff. Sweet, I'm just making sure I'm still connected, getting some beeps there. Thought I was after disconnecting. But yeah, basically, you know, there's going to be no advertising of cannabis allowed, and I don't disagree with that. You know, I always agreed with the removing, as I said, the advertising of alcohol from our sports. I don't think we should have a Heineken cup. I think it's kind of inappropriate, really glorifying the consumption of any drugs, you know, within a sport. sports are supposed to be positive things for health, and to allow something that has such a negative impact upon a health that as alcohol has when it's abused, I don't think that's a good thing. But look, as I say, advertising of cannabis would not be allowed under the proposed legislation that's the New Zealanders are going to get the vote on the 19th of September. Another piece of included in that is growers cannot sell and sellers cannot grow. So a person has to make a choice. If they want to grow cannabis, they can't sell cannabis to the public. That is, they can sell it to somebody who then has a license to resell to the public. But the person who has a license to resell to the public, they can't grow. Again, there's probably good reason why they're putting that there, to control the flow of the product and all of that. I think there's good reason there. Again, there's some smart people sat down for a while, had good deep discussions on this, and they decided this is what they're going to do going forward. And I hope they're successful in implementing this. And then the final piece there, or not the final piece actually, is import and export is not allowed. Obviously, that is for obvious reasons. They can't import it into Ireland or they can't export it to Ireland. So, goes for obvious reasons. Then they have a part there on personal growing at home. So a person can grow up to 2 plants in their home, or if 2 people or maybe more people in a home wanted to grow, they're limited to 4 plants in their home. So if you have 6 adults living in a house and all 6 of them wanted to grow, well, they'll have to figure out what to do with the 4 plants between the 6 of them. But if there's 1 person in a house on their own, or 2 people in the house and together, they can grow either 2 or 4 plants. But the limit is 4 per household or 2 per person, So again, can't argue with these things. This is all very positive stuff. I hope that they have success there in getting a majority vote there. I think that they need more than 50% there in order to get the government to support these measures that they've proposed. So that's a good thing, And then the reason why I actually done this video is because of an article I came across where we had an Irish professor, Dr. Mary Cannon is her title, and she's a professor of psychiatric epidemiology and youth mental health. So there was an article there done by herself, and I'm just going to transition over to that there so you can see it. And in this article that's put together by the author Kate Hawkesby, she titles it "Legalising Cannabis, Why Would We Be So Dumb?" So why would we be so dumb? Why would we be so dumb to continue enforcing prohibition? Very good measures here, as I outlined, very good recommendations there, where you would no longer criminalise a person for possessing a substance and enforce in health-based kind of reactions to it rather than criminalising them. That's why. But anyway, within this article here, as I scroll down through it, you can kind of read that there. But there's a part here, look, a professor of epidemiology, So basically, she says that the argument alcohol is legal and is more harmful than cannabis, therefore cannabis should be legal, is redundant. She's saying that argument is redundant. Fair enough, but you look at the other side of it, where cannabis is illegal and it's easily accessible by kids. Surely, Mary, having controls in place is much more beneficial than not having controls in place. Having age limits applied at the point of sale, surely that's much more beneficial to the mental health of young people, as opposed to just leaving it in the hands of criminal drug dealers who would happily sell it to a 15-year-old, And she follows on to say that this argument is, it's like comparing, would you rather be hit by a truck or a bus? Complete nonsense. How in the name of God is that? It's similar to that argument. Would you rather be hit by a truck or a bus? Jesus Christ, Mary, you're a fearmonger. Come on, get off the stage. Getting hit by a truck or a bus is going to result in death most likely, depending on the speed upon which they hit you. Like, using alcohol in a controlled and a sensible manner is not going to result in your death. Using cannabis again in a sensible and a responsible manner is not going to result in your death. Where do you get off in saying this? Like, really, like comparing like getting hit by a truck or a bus. Seriously, like you're a mad woman, like seriously. She says here, it's a cop-out for pro-cannabis legalisation lobbyists to argue along these lines because the one big elephant in the room is psychiatric disorder. Great, psychiatric disorder. Let's talk about this. Like, she goes on to say, like, she was a part of a study where she found that was it 10% of young people who had been using cannabis by age 15 developed psychiatric disorders in young adulthood. Okay, let's look at what you just said there, okay? 1 in 10 young people who had used cannabis by age 15, okay? So these people, so 100% of them had used cannabis by age 15. Boom, there you go. Failure of prohibition. Kids were able to get access to it. But what you're saying then is 1 in 10 of them have issues there going on in the future. But what you're not saying is that 9 in 10 of them don't. 9 in 10 kids who've used cannabis by age 15, by your things here, like you're not pointing out any issue with those. You're saying 1 in 10 of them will have an issue. So because 1 in 10 young people have an issue with mental disorders, you think enforcing prohibition or continuing prohibition is a good idea. But you fail to recognise that under prohibition, they get access to cannabis. Not only do they get access to cannabis, but they get access to cannabis that's not fucking regulated, Seriously, like, the stuff is not regulated. The THC content of the cannabis, it's unknown. The people they get it off of are scumbag criminals a lot of the time who will recruit them into drug dealing then, And then again, the elephant in the room, to use your own one, like, is why were these kids seeking drug use in the first place? Maybe that 1 in 10 actually were like the people who self-medicate with tobacco, who suffer with schizophrenia. Maybe they were self-medicating with cannabis and they didn't realise it. It's a possibility, but your argument that we should keep cannabis illegal and continued with prohibition because 1 in 10 young people who use it by the age of 15 developed psychiatric disorders, as you put it. And I just don't support that. Like, regulation will protect those young people. Proper education, breaking down the stigma, not making it so cool for these young people to go out and use cannabis because it's illegal. If we change the way in which these young people see it, maybe we can reduce the amount that they use it. You look in Holland where like the use of cannabis is somewhat normalized there because they tolerate the sale from their coffee shops. They're younger. They're people under 18, their generation under 18, their population under 18 use cannabis less than our population that's under 18, even though cannabis is more widely available there. Just think about it, like, isn't it better that like they're getting a product from a regulated source than from an unregulated source, even if they are getting it at the age of under 15? I would argue that the regulated source is so much better, Like, I have a 13-year-old daughter at home, and I would much rather her maybe, let's say, steal my cannabis. Like, if that's an argument you're going to use against me having cannabis as a consenting adult at home, that my kids could rob it off me. Well, if I bought that from a regulated source, I would much rather my child rob that from me than going out to some scumbag drug dealer and getting it, Again, I point out when I was a young person myself, it was so easy to get cannabis and hash than it was so much easier than getting alcohol. When I got alcohol, I had to stand outside of an off license. I had to ask another adult who was of the right age to go in and get it for me. And as I say, during those times, I wasn't always successful in getting alcohol. We ended up just going away, getting a nodge of hash and having a smoke that evening or something, with the money that we might have used for alcohol instead. But the thing was, like, there was other times where we got harm reduction information. We weren't put at risk of being recruited into the world of drug dealing or selling alcohol. So it's much more safer there that we regulate cannabis in order to protect young people, make it a bit more difficult for them to get it. And again, if they do get it, we make it more safer for them because there's quality assurance and all of the above in place. So Mary, like, obviously, like, you have a very biased perspective on this, like, your view, but I just don't like your contribution to this. Like, I think it is very detrimental to the health of young people, actually. Your desire to see prohibition of cannabis continue. It needs to end. We need to take a different approach. Like, we really do need to change how we have cannabis present in our society, because that's the thing. Like, it is here. It's just here in a very uncontrolled manner. It's sold by criminals. Let's create jobs, not criminals. Let's save lives. Let's really help people and protect people. All of these patients out there, all of the people who seek access to medical cannabis, they're robbed of that because of our government and all of these people like Mary with their misguided opinions, like, and judgments there, like, who want to continue the war on drugs and the cannabis prohibition, and much to the detriment of our young people. Like, go on, check out that article if you like. The title is there, Kate Cosby, Legalising Cannabis, Why Would We Be So Dumb? Check it out for yourself, and maybe reach out to Mary Cannon there and share your thoughts and opinions on her opinion, and maybe the misguided way in which she sees things. You know, Again, ask her these questions. Is it not better that these 15-year-olds who got cannabis and developed psychiatric disorders, that 1 in 10, would it not be better that they get cannabis from a regulated source, maybe where the THC wasn't so high? Because Mary goes on to talk about that later in this article, actually, where at the end of it, I think she argues here about against legalization. Go to a part. So she talks here, and so why are we playing with fire here, talking about legalization? Why would we want to normalize this and pretend the harms aren't real? Again, Mary, no one is talking here and saying that the harms aren't real. Normalizing this is actually not the aim. It's to make it safer, regulate it, because cannabis is being illegal is actually a normalized thing where it's very attractive to young people. But again, go on. Often the people arguing for cannabis legalization are adult casual users and not young adolescents who'll be most impacted by this. Yes, Mary, I am an adult, but I'm also coming to this from the perspective as somebody who was one of these young adolescents. I'm now much more grown up. I'm one of these 90% who use cannabis by the age of 15, but I didn't go on and develop the psychiatric disorder. Some might argue I have, but I don't think I have. I'm quite within the well happy with where my mental health is at the moment. I'm not happy with how the government treat us, and I speak up against that. Yes, definitely I do. You know. Yeah, she says the casual pot smoking lovey may well buy or grow the legalised amounts and varieties, but the kids won't. They'll seek out black market cannabis with dangerously high levels of THC, still propping up gangs and manufacture. Listen, Mary, okay? If you legalise cannabis in an effective way, okay, there will be not any gangs left that will be involved in growing cannabis, okay? Because there'll be no money in it for them. Why aren't there gangs producing alcohol? And okay, maybe there actually is there coming in, but that's because of the bloody stupid tax our government have been increasing upon alcohol over the years. That's another argument for a different day. But again, if we put effective measures in place, if we don't tax the bollocks out of it, if we tax it efficiently, then we can control it and keep it out of the black market. Yes, we can do that through efficient regulations. And again, as I say, we'll have young people going getting it then from these regulated avenues. They'll have young people maybe queuing up outside of maybe these regulated stores where cannabis is being sold from, and they'll ask an adult to go in and get something for them, you know. Maybe the kids might be smart. They might want to try out something that's a 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio because they've read a little bit or heard a bit about cannabis. You don't know. I know when I was younger, when I was getting alcohol, I knew vodka was super strong and I knew beer was mild. Again, young people will know this, you know. I'm not saying I didn't choose to buy vodka as a young person. It was just I knew what I was getting into before I got into it. Currently, when a young person buys cannabis from the black market, they don't know what they're getting into. They don't know whether they're getting something that is 50% THC, 100% THC. Obviously, I know that's not possible, but look, they just don't know what they're getting at all. They don't know if they're getting something that's sprayed with one of these synthetic cannabinoids, one of these K2 spice things that you hear all the real psychotic disorders coming from, where the percentage is much, much higher than what we're seeing here from organic, natural cannabis plants, you know. So she finishes off the article there, anyway, by saying, so what changes the message? The message from adults around them and the government that cannabis is okay. No, we're not saying that. You can legalize something, you can normalize it. If you want to stack up an argument around cannabis and alcohol, that's surely it. Look at them, the harm is created, and you want to compare cannabis. You want to add cannabis to the mix. Why would you be so dumb? And there you go. That's where she gets her title to the thing. Because why would you be so dumb? Because we look at alcohol prohibition. Jesus Mary. Look at alcohol prohibition. That's why. Like, why would we be so dumb to continue cannabis prohibition when it funds, as you say, like these criminal gangs? Why? Why would we be so dumb to continue to leave so many people suffering without access to efficient access to medicinal cannabis products? Why would we be so dumb in order to continue the restricted research that's there around cannabis currently? You know, why would we be so dumb in order to leave cannabis in the control of criminals? Why would we be so dumb not to put an age limit in place? You know, why would we be so dumb not to control and regulate the sale of cannabis? Why would we be so dumb not to control the production of cannabis? You know, why would we be so dumb? Really, Mary, like, come on. Why would you be so dumb and to go and make all these silly bloody arguments? Like, surely a woman of your credentials, like, has a bit of brain capacity there, like, to ask these questions, you know? To look a bit deeper, you know, look past your biased position, you know, that reefer madness era propaganda that I can see coming through in your opinion. Why would you be so dumb and to continue that? So, guys, you know, that's kind of it for me to this evening. I hope that wasn't a bit too ranty and stuff. I just wanted to share my opinion there on Mary's opinion, and to just give a shout out there to the New Zealanders out there fighting the cause of legalization, and to apologise for that contribution there from one of our citizens here in Ireland. You know, we're not all so dumb. We're not. Some of us actually can use our brain and can think for ourselves and can see the harms that prohibition causes in our society, and can see the benefits that legalization of cannabis would bring to our society. So, guys, from the bottom of my heart, I apologise, and I sent out good love and positive vibrations to you, and much respect for you, and I hope you're successful in your fight for legalization over there. So, guys, this is Martin Conlon from Martin's World signing off. Peace and love, guys. Have a good evening, and catch you again during the week.